Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Baker, and this is Momma Stories. I created Momma Stories after seeing how impactful sharing stories can be in overcoming the challenges of motherhood. I am where I am today because of the stories of so many amazing, strong mamas, and I want to share that with every mom I can. So follow along to laugh, cry, and be empowered. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. Have you heard about how we are changing the story for moms? Momma Fund is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to providing products, services, and education to moms in need. So check us out at mommafund.org. Welcome to the show today, Amanda.
Thank you.
Amanda, thank you so much for allowing me in your beautiful home.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for coming.
Yes. All right. So tell us a little bit about Amanda.
Sure. My name's Amanda Huffman. I am a mother of 4. I've been married for 20 years. I also work with a Pinterest marketing company, and I run a nonprofit foundation. And my family is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long have you been working for the marketing company?
It's just been about over 2 years. I worked with them earlier in my parenting career, and took some time off when my daughter got sick, but then I jumped back on board. So it's been a nice, my degree's in marketing, so it's been really kind of a nice thing to kind of put my brain in a different space and be able to have my own schedule and work from home and things like that. So yeah.
Plus Pinterest.
Yeah.
Like your job is to be on Pinterest.
Exactly.
Basically.
Not many people can say that.
That's
so,
a pretty good gig.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. So you are a mom of 4.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through your motherhood journey. How old were you when you had your first one?
Let's see. We were married. Brandon and I got married in 1999. And we had our first child in 2003, so our oldest is just about 16. So we'll be getting ready for driver's license and all of that, which is a whole other thing. But then, and then we had our son 2 years later. So Cade, he's in 8th grade. He's our only boy. And then we had Avery a few years after that. She is forever 7. However, coincidentally, this week would be her 11th birthday. So your timing is on point for this discussion today. So it's kind of neat. And then our youngest will be 8 at the end of November. So,
wow.
So
So before we jump into Avery,
sure.
16, are you just like freaking out, like driver's license coming and?
Yeah. It's a trip to think that, you just remember your own 16th birthday and getting your driver's license and all of that and what that meant and how things have changed now. And they have a lot more legalities in place. You can't drive your friends. So, there's some other great things that have progressed since ages ago when I turned 16. But, but it is. We're feeling old.
Yeah.
For sure. Just to have our kid now driving. But I think she's looking forward to it, and it'll be nice to kind of ease some burdens too. Like she can help pick up people from practice and stuff like that. So
that part is nice.
Yeah.
I just can't even fathom. Like I get nervous when Grayson is just like playing at the park by himself and I'm still there. I can't even imagine that independence of being in a car alone.
Right. I know. Also,
because I remember turning 16, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. So that's also part of my fear.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
I know. So thankfully she's a little nervous too. Mm-hmm. So
that's good.
We're using that to our benefit. Yeah. I think there's some 16-year-olds that are like, anxiously awaiting that day. And the freedom that it may bring that they think is coming. But she's super responsible and all of that. So
that's good.
I think she's a little apprehensive.
Plus I feel like girls are better at that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that could be.
A little bit more responsible at a younger age.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that since I was a girl or I am a girl.
Right. You are. You're still a girl.
I still am. All right. So you have your 4 beautiful babies. And you mentioned that Avery is forever 7. Mm-hmm. So when Avery was 6 years old, is that right?
Yep.
You received a diagnosis for her.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that day?
So life was normal, like any other family. We had a busy life of soccer practice and school and, church and family and all, just all the things that occupy a young mother's, day. And just shortly after Avery completed kindergarten in 2015, she woke up one morning and told me that she was seeing 2 of everything. And so, we looked closer and we realized that one of her eyes was a little inverted. And, so I sort of Googled some things and looked up what that could possibly be, and thought maybe she had just developed a lazy eye, which is fairly common in kids. And so we just kind of watched it for a few days and didn't, you're like, they get scratches, they get bruises,
right?
They get all these things, like kids are kids. So you just don't ever know.
Yeah.
Like, is this more than like what this is? And we certainly didn't think that at that time. So it was about 3 or 4 days of this eye still acting that way. And so I called around and I got an appointment at a pediatric eye doctor who specializes in just seeing kids and that sort of stuff. So they were able to get me in sooner because, of course, the waiting list for these things is, weeks out.
Yeah.
And could kind of stress the urgency when I called, and they could sense that. So we went and saw a great local eye doctor who came recommended. And it was in that appointment, just thinking that we're going to, be able to patch her eye and like strengthen things up, that he was clearly concerned. And I just had my mom with me at that time. Brandon was out of town. So he looked at me and he said, well, I'm seeing more than just a lazy eye. And when I kind of probed a little bit more about what did he mean, there's several nerves in your face. And so there was more than just the eye nerve being like kind of paralyzed at that point. And he noticed some facial palsy too on one side of her face when he was examining her. And so then he recommended that we get an MRI from there. And so what was started off as just some simple eye exam turned into, a lot of fear, panic, and worry,
Yeah.
And so he gave us some numbers. As soon as we left, I called, and it was sort of the same thing, like, oh, in 3 weeks we have an MRI.
Oh, wow.
We can fit you in, and it's like, as a mom, you were not going to take that,
Yeah.
So you I remember I can be pretty firm, and I think when our kids are involved and things like that are so important, you want to push for things to happen faster. So I ended up being able to get her in to a different office for a different MRI, but they could read it faster. So we went for a follow-up for the appointment. Brandon was back in town.
So this was like days later.
This was a few days after.
Okay.
Yeah.
And had anything gotten worse, or is it still just the eye?
It was still the eye. She was noticeably a little more clumsy. Like her balance was off, things like that. But otherwise, same disposition, same personality, like every, appetite, sleeping patterns, like everything like that was all the same. So we went for the MRI. They were able to get the results over to the eye doctor fairly quickly. So we went back over to the eye doctor, and that's really when the nightmare, was determined, and it really began. I thought it was at that initial appointment, but it was certainly after we had the MRI results. And, they bring you into a back room, and all the eye doctor says is, you need to get to the hospital, and you need to get there right now. Do not go home. Go to the emergency room. They'll be expecting you. And we found a mass. They can tell you more, but you need to go now. So we sort of collapsed on the floor in the back of with the eye doctor. Avery was with us.
She was in the room.
She was in the room. One of the techs took her out after it was like clearly we couldn't compose ourselves to move as quickly out into the waiting room to leave. And, they were, of course, apologetic and kind and all of that, but it was sort of like your worst nightmare, so many questions and no answers, of course, because this isn't his area of expertise.
Right.
So we got in the car and we went down to Mary Bridge in Tacoma for the ER. And of course, just as he said, everyone was waiting for us and expecting us because they had already called ahead and said we were coming. They did a few more exams. They had the MRI at that point already as well. And then it was determined exactly what was wrong with Avery's eye. And she was officially diagnosed with a disease called DIPG, which stands for diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. It's a tumor in the pons of your brainstem. And the pons basically is the epicenter for all your brain activity, for your breathing, your heart rate, for your vision, for body movement, for everything. It's equated to like a ball of yarn. So it's this whole infused of all these nerve endings that are in your pons. And that's essentially where the tumor is. And that's what's called DIPG. So that's why Avery's eye was inverted, because that was one of the nerves that was affected with where her tumor was located.
So when you got to the hospital before they did all these tests, what was Avery's reaction to all of this? I mean, obviously as parents, you guys are just melting down, but what was she doing?
She was, we're trying to remain calm for her. I didn't want her to see us, with having fear, just to perpetuate the situation. Yeah. So we tried to, we played music on the way down in the car. Like we just were trying to, maintain as much normalcy just for her. I figured she didn't need to feel more panic, than was necessary. So we tried to shield her some from that. But I remember her distinctly asking me in particular, as soon as we got home a few days later, because we ended up having to be admitted and lots of things. I remember her saying that, her point blank asking me if she was going to die. And at that point, we hadn't even shared, kind of the timeline of what this disease looks like and anything. So it was certainly a difficult question and situation. But I think looking back now, I think she sort of knew more than we thought she did, And in lots of ways we were learning from her, even though we thought we were helping her, ourselves. So
how did you handle that question? What did you say?
Well, I think I just remember, I didn't lie to her, but I just basically, I hugged her and I said, well, I don't want that either. The thing with DIPG is that there's no treatment. It's not like a glioma or other brain cancers where there's effective protocol for any sort of assistance or treatment. The only offering for DIPG is palliative treatment, and that's basically for life extension. That's not for a cure. That's not for treatment. That's just to buy you time. So when we were there in the ER, we hear DIPG. We ask questions like, well, okay, what can we do? When's the surgery?
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? And when you're not getting a response, you just get sort of a blank stare. It's not good. There's no timeline. The average life expectancy for somebody that's been diagnosed with DIPG is 6 to 9 months.
Wow.
And Avery was lucky to get 7.5. So.
Wow. So what did that look like? You came home. Obviously, your world is completely different. But now you have Avery, and then you have all your other kids. Mm-hmm. How do you take the next step?
So we ended up being admitted after that initial emergency room visit. Avery had to have some steroid treatments to reduce her inflammation. We had to start lining up radiation treatment that would shortly follow for 30 days in a row. And she became, you're taking all these things and they suggest and it's supposed to help. But along with it became like so much fear and personality changes. Steroids they were giving her, like make her super hungry and almost moments of rage. And that's just inevitable with what she had to take. And so we had to work through that. But it was hard for sure. And then having really tough conversations with our other kids, at home on what we were looking at and what this road was going to be like.
Did you have those like alone or as a family? How did you handle those conversations?
Yeah, we sat, well, at that time, our oldest two kids were able to have those kind of deeper discussions with us. So we sat them down, and then our youngest was 3. So it was a difficult time to try to process exactly what she was understanding. Yeah. So we sat Alex and Cade down, and really just told them. They knew, obviously, that something was wrong. We had been gone for a few days with her in the hospital. But just what this diagnosis was, what it meant, what we were looking at, really hard, difficult questions that they had to process and ask too. And then also just, kids are kids, right? So they want to know, like, what does this mean for them? Yeah. And how, our time wasn't going to be totally available to them. We were going to be, juggling a lot. Lots of people helping us with things. They were going to be kind of on the back burner, so to speak, for a little bit. So we just really had a lot of open conversations about what we were up against. Yeah.
I can't imagine going through any of that. It's hard to even know like how to ask, how to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know how someone takes the next step from something like that. I think we've talked about this previously, but with your kids primarily, I think it's easy to be like, well, they just kept me going, right? Like Avery had these treatments that we had to do. So it's kind of just not autopilot that you would actually be on, but it's like, okay, we have a next step to take. But I think what's great about what you just shared is that I do think kids are sometimes stronger than we think that they are. And I do think being open with your oldest too about this, I'm sure helped them start to process it too, because how do you process it, one, but then how do you help them process it? And
Right.
I think being open is probably one of the hardest things you could ever do, but I'm sure it helped a lot in comparison to not giving them
Not
everything,
sharing.
trying to
Sure.
or shield them from what's going to happen, right?
And we really tried to be as transparent as possible. And I think because it was so hard, for all of us in so many ways, the more we could talk about it, the better it made kind of coping with things go.
Yeah.
So we didn't always have, of course, the right answers, or maybe we didn't handle everything the right way.
Sure.
But it's, we asked those hard questions. We talked about those hard things, and we were able to be together. And at that point, like, really, that's all that mattered, So, like, who cares about, soccer practice? It's like we're making memories as a family because this is what we have today. So, yeah.
And so did Avery still go to school, or what did Avery's days look like?
She did. So she was diagnosed June 30 of 2015. She started radiation on July 4th of that year. So all for the next month and a half, we had daily radiation treatments. Avery was a rock star in that she didn't have to be sedated for any of her radiation or her MRIs. So she was able to sit still for all of those treatments. And I don't know if you've ever been or seen somebody receive radiation treatment in their brain, but they essentially have to get fitted for a plastic. It's a mesh mask that they get fitted for that fits their whole entire face. And then it starts off soft, and then after it's ready, it's basically a hard plastic piece of mesh. So it's breathable, sort of like a net, but like really fine weave. And so it's fitted and it's form-fitting to her face, almost like Spider-Man sort of mask. And then they actually snap that down to a tabletop. So from the neck all the way around the whole head, it's snapped down to a tabletop. And then they're put into this tube that does the actual radiation. So the whole process only takes about, the radiation itself, you have to step out. She's in this room by herself, snapped to this table with this machine kind of working over her. It's only about 5 minutes, but if you saw it, it would be enough to, most adults can't even do that. So she had radiation all through the summer. We were contacted by Make-A-Wish. We had a Make-A-Wish trip. She wanted to go to Disney World, so we went and did that as a family. Had lots of other really unique, cool things. The community really rallied around us, and Avery got to do a lot of like surprise parties, and she was honored as the honorary Princess of Arendelle from Kristen Bell, and so that was really exciting.
That's so
Kristen
cool.
Bell called her on the phone and asked her about Hoppy Jumpy and her family and all this sort of stuff. So it was just really neat. Like, she had a lot of really cool experiences that brought her joy, and the other kids too. It kind of helped us cope through those difficult weeks of treatment. And then school started, and there was no way she was going to miss first grade. So we met with her school. At this point with this disease, it basically takes away your abilities to walk. Like I said, having a tumor in your pons affects each child different. And so as soon as Avery's inverted eye started and we started radiation, she eventually lost the ability to walk, and she suffered full right side body paralysis. So she was wheelchair bound. She was right-handed, so she ended up figuring out how she could accommodate her left hand to do the things that she needed to do. So she learned to write with her left hand, to feed herself, kind of all of those skills that you and I might take for granted, but one day when you wake up and you can't use your hand that you thought you could, kind of retrained herself to kind of process through, and that was certainly admirable.
Yeah.
You know, so she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't use the restroom by herself. She can't get out of her wheelchair into her desk chair. So we had to work with the school district to set up a para for her that would assist her at, during the day when she was there. But there was no way Avery was going to miss, first grade. Like that was sort of like her drive, to see her friends, to be in class, to feel normal, kind of all of those things. But at this point, Avery had gone through radiation. She'd been on these heavy doses of steroids, which are protocol for somebody with DIPG. So she'd already gained at this point probably about 40 pounds on her tiny 6-year-old body, which is quite a bit. So she's not using all of her muscles. So she looks very different than the Avery that just finished kindergarten. So it was a big deal to go to first grade, and so many kids staring, and so many kids looking and wondering and like trying to figure out, like even her close friends too, like, she looked drastically different than the Avery they knew.
Yeah.
So
how did she handle that?
There were moments where she struggled with that, but for the most part, we tried like just to maintain, average, normal. She just liked to laugh a lot. And so we tried to just keep the humor going. She loved to be silly. And, we did our best to never mention or talk about stuff. I mean, it was obvious to all of us and to her too. Like, I can't do things on my own now. I don't recognize myself. When am I going to look like myself again? Stuff like that. So it was hard for sure.
Yeah. Trying to remain normalcy is something that you keep saying, and I'm sure that that's hard because that's not normal. It's not really what you expected, obviously, and it's not what Avery expected. And so I'm sure that took a lot of work and a lot of trying on your part and on Brandon's part. Yeah. What did your alone time look like? Like, did you have time to just breathe and take in the fact that it isn't normal anymore?
Well, you're talking like that time at that.
Yeah. Like while this is all happening.
We tried our best to really be everything to all the kids at that time. So I would say we didn't really, I was sort of fearful of having those moments by myself.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that if I could come back from that and still be the role that I needed to be. So I don't think I really ever let myself go to that place. When we were in the thick of it, because that was my coping mechanism and my push for survival, is that like, well, gosh, it's not time for a mom pity party right now, for sure. I don't have time for that. The kids, they need more. So I didn't really, we all knew what was coming. And I guess that was the hardest part, was thinking more like, how will this be then,
Mm-hmm. So when did Avery pass?
So she was, so she turned 7 in October.
October 19th, right?
October 19th.
Happy birthday to Avery.
Thank you. She had a big party. We had all of our friends. It's one thing to plan. Oh, sorry.
No, don't be.
It's one thing to plan your first birthday, your second birthday, It's another to plan your kids what you know will be their last birthday. But we tried to give Avery everything she wanted and celebrate her. So we did our best, and we had manicures. She was so limited in what she could do then, so it made it hard. Like, she would have loved to, done so much more. But we had friends come, and we watched a movie, and we painted nails, kind of just the simple stuff. And that was enough. She had the best day. So then we went through the Christmas season that year, also knowing what was coming. Avery was getting more symptoms. Things were getting worse. She was gaining more weight. She couldn't move more parts of her body. Thankfully, we made it through the new year. We had some special things planned for all this time. Community friends decorated our house with Christmas lights and decor. Tried to make things magical, not just for her, but for the kid, all the kids. We had a magician come on New Year's Eve and have a performance in our house. We had a puppy party, another organization of someone that we know
Where they
brought
bring
over
puppies
over to our house.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so we
amazing.
had 6 or 7 golden retriever puppies that just licked all over the kid. I mean, it was just a special time. And, in those moments, you don't see disease, you don't see sadness, you're just locked into puppies and smiles and joy. Yeah. So just after New Year's, Avery started complaining again of severe headaches, and she was unable to go to school for a few days. She made it in for half a day, but then she was just too sick, too much nausea and her headaches, and so we ended up having to bring her back to the hospital, and it was determined then that she had hydrocephalus, which is too much fluid in your brain. It can't regulate. So it was causing all these other things. So she had to undergo a emergency surgery to drain some fluid out of her brain. And we met with the neurosurgeon in the ER, and he basically said, with this disease, this will help, but it's not gonna, it's essentially you can do this surgery, but it's not gonna help. But at that, when you're looking at your daughter in pain, and you're gonna do the surgery, because the option of not doing it is just continued pain, even though the outcome at the end. So they did an emergency drain, and then as soon as she came to after surgery, she was her normal self. Everything was great. It was oh my goodness, maybe that's all we needed. That was it. Everything will be okay still for a little while.
And she could still talk, and it was just losing body function.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So then it was about 2 weeks later. No, it was about a week later. We noticed that her incision had gone on her head from this drain. And so we had to bring her back in, and it was determined then that she really needed to have a shunt put into her brain to help regulate the fluid so that it wouldn't keep building up. And so it was sort of the same process, well, you can do this surgery, but, is it going to help? I mean, with this disease, I don't know, and you have some risks. And anyway, as parents, you make these horrible, excruciating decisions about what's best from, the on-call neurosurgeon, and anyway. So we ended up following through with the shunt surgery, and that was sort of the beginning of the end, really. Avery went through the surgery fine and came home, and then from there we essentially were admitted into hospice service. So we were able to bring her home, have our doctor come weekly to the house to examine her and check on her, and then also get some assistance and at home for bathing and therapy and stuff like that. And so those were hard. Those were hard days. Sure.
Somebody was here with her. Excuse me. Somebody was here with her 24/7, or
no, but just given that she was so unable to do things by herself, and at that point, like, it was hard to lift her. So it was essentially for us to enroll into hospice. It was the doctor saying, there's really nothing more we can do for her medically, and so that was the recommendation, is that, and we knew for sure we didn't want to live her final days at the hospital.
Yeah.
And she had made that clear too. So we pushed so hard to be able to just go home, and do normal life. So the hope was that after the shunt surgery, that even on hospice services, like, that didn't mean, that was it at that point. Like, you're signing up for the end. We are, of course, hoping that there's more time, ahead, but it just allows you it allows you to have medical services in your house and not have to go to the hospital anytime something else comes up. So she had to get a port at that time so that we could give any medications intravenously and not have to, poke her and everything like that every time. So I had to get training on how to do that, how to clean it, how to flush it, all of that. But it just allowed us to have care at our house and not have to take her in, which was a blessing for sure.
Yeah. What did Avery do during the day? Did she watch TV, read books,
man.
or?
Yes, Avery was like the movie queen. So we had set up her her room at that point. We had a hospice, like a hospital bed, so it had it could raise. We got Apple TV for her room, and yes, she became the master of the Netflix, and we watched like movies around the clock. She loved to do art, so we colored. She was really big into her pets, so we, when she was first diagnosed, Avery wanted her own pet. I didn't share this with you, and at that time we had a dog, and it was like, no, you're not getting your own pet, because if you think you need your own pet, then Alex needs her own pet, and Cade needs his own pet, and Addison's gonna want her own pet, and it's like, that's like more pets than kids, so no. So but Avery had this way of getting what she wanted, always, for sure, wrapping us around her finger. So she really wanted her own pet, and she was, I'm going to treatment today, I need my own pet. And so we brought her to the pet store, and she ended up picking out this bunny. So she picked out this little gray bunny, and she ended up naming him Hoppy Jumpy, which he sort of became famous for. So we call him HJ. And he would just sit on her lap. He came to radiation treatments in like a little carry bag. Like, we never asked permission. It was like, we're bringing Hoppy Jumpy, because it just soothed her. It was sort of like her therapy pet. So she would hold her bunny in her hospice bed, and he would just sit on her. And he's not a guy just to sit. He's like around the whole room. He's box trained. He's like better than a cat, really. And so she, would want the pets up there with her and everything else. And, friends came by to visit, and we baked cookies. And at that point, we were still able to get her up and down the stairs for small periods of time, but it was hard for her to be up because it kind of made headaches worse and everything else. So we tried to do a lot of, fun stuff in her room, just to pass the time. Yeah.
Well, I think with great tragedy, there can also be a light that comes from that. And I think you and your husband, your family have done a really beautiful job honoring Avery. And so you've set up Avery Strong. So can you tell us a little bit about your foundation and what you do there?
Sure. So Avery passed in February. She had her last brain surgery the last week of January. And then she passed about 2.5 weeks later on the 16th of February of 2016, just 7.5 months after her diagnosis. So we knew, both Brandon and I, that we couldn't just sit by and have our daughter and our family be exposed to this disease and succumb to this disease and not do anything. So DIPG itself is the most deadliest form of pediatric cancer. I'm ashamed that I never even heard of it before. My own daughter had it. But, until you're kind of thrust into this world of cancer and tragedy and things like that, your eyes are not always open to maybe somebody else's pain and heartbreak. So we try to build awareness. It's the most underfunded medically disease as well. So we hope to put a stop to that. So what we've established, it's called the Avery Huffman Defeat DIPG Foundation. Avery's slogan for her whole battle was Avery Strong. So that's in our logo as well. And essentially what we fund is medical research for DIPG specifically, in hopes of finding a cure so that kids and families ahead won't have to face death. There'll be some treatment options. They won't be told, you need to go make memories because there's nothing we can do for you. There's going to be some treatment options. There's going to be some medicine to take. There's going to be some hope that's going to be able to be given. And so that's our goal, and that's what we're pushing for in our grief, is that nobody will know this pain,
Yeah. How many kids are affected in the U.S.?
Yeah. In the U.S. alone, each year, they say 300 to 400 cases.
Wow, that's a lot.
So they consider it rare. However, I would say it's real. So it doesn't even matter if it's rare or not. It's terminal. And a lot of people don't realize there's, a sort of brain cancer that kids can get that will kill them. And there's nothing that they can do. And there's nothing that they can give them that makes it stop. And so, I guess that's part of it too is, before this, I was unaware that, that there was such a thing. Oh, well, there's medicine, right? I mean, this day and age, there's got to be all these different things. Yeah. So it's considered rare. But now that I'm a family that's been affected by this, we make ourselves available to other families too that may, God forbid, one day also know this nightmare, just that we can support them and come around them and help them in kind of those hard questions. Parents that have been through it seem to know more than a lot of medical professionals, sadly. So, sitting back and not saying something wasn't really an option for us. So,
yeah. In your foundation, do you meet other parents that are either had or are dealing with this same diagnosis?
Mm-hmm. We're part of a larger network. Our foundation is, our parent chapter is based out of Maryland in Bethesda. It's called Michael Mosier Defeat DIPG Foundation. And the Mosier started the Defeat DIPG network in honor of their son, who was also diagnosed with DIPG just about a year before Avery. So they connected with us when Avery was sick, kind of stood by us, offered support, advice, encouragement, love, all of those things. It's just nice to have another family to bounce questions off of.
Yeah.
Share your pain, simple things like, what did you do when this happened? And, Michael could no longer talk and you couldn't understand him. Things like that. Like it was, just really comfort to have other people that understood exactly what you were going through. So they have established the foundation. So ours here in Washington State is a registered name for their foundation, so we're under them. And there's a few other families across the country that have also joined forces together with us. We have one in Chicago, also one in the Houston area, one in Kansas. So we're really trying to work together, and then we pool all of the money that we fundraise each year, and we co-fund various medical trials and grant proposals. We have a scientific council that reviews all of our proposals, so it's nice. We have head medical professionals from all the elite institutions that review everything. We know that so many doctors and hospitals, they want money. Everyone wants money.
Yeah.
But we also know how hard we work for each dollar. So it's great to have our scientific council that reviews our funding proposals, because we're funding the things that make the most sense and not just giving money away, because we like this doctor or, whatnot. So it's a good, setup for what we're doing. And I think that us working together only creates more movement and moving the needle towards a cure. So I think that's an important thing to mention too.
Excuse me. Well, I think it's admirable that you took that path. I think there's always two things to do when you're faced with a challenge and something so tragic, which is to do it in isolation and to do it in community. Mm-hmm. And neither of those are better than the other. You know, we all kind of handle our pain and our situation differently. But I do think that doing it in community just helps you, I think, but also from sitting here on the other side of the couch to see you take the next step and to see you continue on for your kids and for your family and for Avery and to do all this good. It just makes me really inspired because I think you're really strong. But I think it also just shows that as moms, we can move forward. Yeah. So even our greatest fears will always be stronger than them. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you sharing all of your story today. And for those that are listening, I think it's important to learn more. So Avery does have a website, which will tell you more about the foundation. And one of my favorite pictures of all time is on that website where Avery's sitting in the chair with the balloons.
Yeah.
It's my favorite picture. So I would encourage you to check it out. I'll have a link here below. And also get involved. I think, spreading the word and being involved. You guys have an event. It just happened, but it happens every year.
Yes, we just had our big gala. Next year will be, in 2020, it will be our 5th annual Be Strong, Go Gold Gala. September is the Pediatric Cancer Awareness Month, so we chose September to host that. And all the money that we raise each year goes for DIPG research. And so that's kind of our biggest one, although we fundraise, of course, all throughout the year in various ways, too.
Cool. Well, with everything that you've gone through and seeing that you're now on this side of it, right, where you're going to start impacting hopefully a cure so parents don't have to have the make memories suggestion and can have a more treatment option given to them. What's your one piece of advice for the mamas out there that are listening?
Just one, huh?
Or all of it.
No, I know. I would really say, I think we all try to be super mom, we try to be all things for all people all the time. But I would say it's okay to lean on other people, and it could be a simple thing, and it's okay to ask for help too. So I think oftentimes we aren't vulnerable and we aren't real with ourselves to say like, we're tired, we don't know what to do, whatever the circumstance. But I would encourage moms to be able to lean when they feel incapable and find support in that. And oftentimes that will be enough to get you through. And so don't be fearful of leaning in whatever capacity that could be. And you don't have to be everything all the time. And there's great awareness in knowing what you need when you need it and acknowledging that. And you might turn out to be a better mom when you're able to realize that you can't be everything, by yourself. So, and then the other thing I would say too is that not to sweat the small stuff. Life can be crazy, and even in somebody in my place of grief and what we've been through and what we're still going through, like this is a lifelong process for us. We have joy and pain now always together. They're one and the same. So while we're getting ready to celebrate Alex turning 16, we're also, celebrating Avery being 11, but she's, missing and absent from us on her birthday. So there's, Christmas, all of these things, like it's joy and pain all the time. Those two go hand in hand. But I would say not sweating the small stuff, focus on what's really important in your life, and don't let your life be jumbled with things that don't matter, that are insignificant, maybe to the big picture, those sorts of things. And to be a yes mom, don't always feel like you need to get to bed at 7 because that's bedtime. One more book, Mom. Sure, honey. I mean, it could be just such simple things, but just to be a yes mom and let your kid walk in the rain if they want to walk in the rain. Just all those simple things that don't hurt anyone, but they may add such joy even for just that moment. So that would be my advice.
That's really good. I know Grayson is at this age right now where he's very independent. So
yes, 2, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes. 3 is even better.
I've heard that. I'm not looking forward to that. I've heard that. And so there's times when he asks to do something like basic, right? Like he wants to go feel the rain.
Right.
And I think like that's really inconvenient for me right now. And so I'm working really hard to be like, okay, so if I say no to this, like why? If I can give a good enough answer as to why I'm not letting him do this,
right,
then we won't do it. But if it's just that I don't want to do it, well, that's silly.
Right.
So that is hard, but that is really good advice.
Yeah.
To just,
well, and yeah, of course, you're not going to let him do stuff that's going to hurt himself.
Sure.
Or risk or harm or anything like that. But yeah, one more glass of water, a cup of hot chocolate, whatever it is, like those are such simple things that can bring such joy. And so I always like encourage people like, you don't know what tomorrow is going to be, you know, or next year, or, you haven't, maybe you wake up and you just never know what tomorrow will bring. So seize the day today and let him feel the rain if he wants to.
Yeah.
Right?
Jump in those puddles.
Right.
Even though I'm going to have to do laundry again.
Oh, man, I know. Laundry doesn't stop.
Well, Amanda, I can't thank you enough for being here today and for sharing your story. And I'm looking forward to the moms who will hear this and dads and whoever, and them hopefully coming alongside you and really being a part of the foundation and just learning more about Avery and DIPG so that we can help spread the word.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share about her.
Oh, of course. Thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you loved it. Please subscribe to this podcast so you can get the latest episodes and tell us what you think about it in the reviews. And mamas, I love you.